22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.
Lynch and the Commissioner Bratton. So I did a lot of interviews for that. We're trying to work on something with Al Jazeera. They could do a special, and basically what the special is about is that there are many Fergusons even in New York. When they talk about Ferguson, the police department, when they talk about the racial makeup of police departments in Ferguson, it's not an isolated incident. So hopefully, right now, the whole news with what's going on in France with the terror suspects and him having the protest march, that's taking up the news. We got to understand, how media works. So now everybody's talking about that. Pat Lynch is getting a break. He's lucky, but
we're going to talk about Pat Lynch.
Yeah. Let's get back to that.
We're going to talk about Pat Lynch, though, because he need to be discussed.
Yeah, let's get back to that. So that's what I've been doing, and that's it, and trying to live and trying to stay healthy, and that's about it, brother.
Cynthia Turnquest-Jones, what have you been up to this week?
So what I did was I got on the horn and made some calls, and so right now, next week, I will be going to see Selma on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I got the 9th, 8th, 7th, and 6th graders, all of them, to be able to view the film for free in New York City.
It's in New York City.
Yeah, all New York City public school students. And I'm not sure why or how they picked the specific grades, but they picked the grades for 7th, 8th, and 9th. I was able to get 6th grade in there as well. And anyone who have more than 25 students had to call into a number.
Right.
And you know how that goes. So I called a number. I was on hold for an hour and a half.
Dedication.
Well,
That's what everybody wouldn't have been.
And shout out to whoever in the New York City school system
put that together.
Oh, I have a. You know what, Damon? I am going to forward you the email from Primus that'll give you the list of names. 27 Afro-Lentual African Americans who foot the bill for that.
Well, that's what I was getting into, because I just reached out. I just had a conversation today with Brother Ramsey, and the group that
shout out to Brother Ramsey.
Yeah, shout out to Brother Ramsey, doing great work with the kids in Mount Vernon.
Right.
And the group that we are sponsoring,
Boys to Men.
Yeah, the Boys to Men group, which
Cecil H. Parker Elementary
School.
Yes, which the Black Law Enforcement of America My Life program is sponsoring to do a lot of things. I asked them, did the kids go see Selma? And he said, good question. And we're going to set it up this week. If the kids haven't, you got to go through the process, permission slips, yada, 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 yada.
Right.
But we're going to work on getting those young men to go see Selma, even if we have to foot the bill ourselves.
Right.
It's not a lot of them. It's 20 the most.
Right.
But, I think it's very important, because I saw the movie yesterday, and I think it's very important that young people see the movie. I almost came to tears anticipating the part where they show the 4 young girls.
In the Birmingham.
One of her names is Cynthia.
Yes. Being bombed, because when you realized what you was getting ready to witness, the anticipation for the incident, and
Well, don't tell me the movie now.
Well, I'm not telling you the movie. I'm just telling you
for that situation, though.
Yeah, for that situation.
I felt that way when I saw Spike Lee's movie about that.
Right.
That was
I
crazy.
got that. I have that on video.
Right.
Also.
And she didn't give it to you quick. You don't know when it's coming. You just know it's coming.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, we read about it. I didn't see the Spike. I didn't catch the Spike Lee one.
Yeah, I have that video.
We did. We went to one of them. We used to do the screenings when I was with the Source and stuff.
Right.
And I went there expecting. They didn't tell us what we were going to see. I went to see a Spike Lee joint, expecting to see a Spike Lee joint.
Right.
Like the ones they didn't tell. This is the first one that wasn't like that. you got to prepare somebody before you see something like that. We were not prepared.
I don't think that there's any kind of
you know, because you know how Spike's movies are. They weren't like that at the time.
Well,
so we weren't prepared, but
since
it
y'all
was
didn't,
a good movie.
right? But since y'all didn't see the movie, I mean, it's really hard. It's a lot of things in the movie, and maybe we have to have that for another day.
Yeah, we should definitely have that for another day.
Yeah, because there's a lot of things in the movie that really need to be discussed.
Yeah, we should have a Selma review.
No, we need to because there's a lot of things in the movie that needs to be discussed. And one of the main things that's going to come out when you watch this movie, that these so-called black preacher leaders, these so-called marching leaders, are doing it wrong.
The ones now.
Right. They're doing it. Either they're doing it wrong out of ignorance, or they purposely diverting the energy of the people somewhere else.
Because they didn't have social media. They didn't have a whole lot of stuff that we have now.
It's not even about that. It's about what was the purpose, and you're going to see the meetings and discussions, right, and you're going to see the brother that played Martin, and he did a hell of a job. You're going to see when they discuss, why do we do this? What is the purpose for this? Right. And then you look and see what these people, what we're marching now, is totally opposite, and what these so-called civil rights leaders now are doing. This is Black Power 101 that this lady put out in this movie.
So I just wanted to tell you that being that you spoke about Brother Ramsey and the boys group at Cecil H. Parker, to this week on the 15th, I'm going to Cecil H. Parker to sit with the girls for Princess of Peace.
Oh, that's
great.
Coming through the bump.
That's what's up.
That's
Brown
great.
Urban Mother Partnership.
That's
so
great.
on Thursday, I'll be there with them, hanging out with them from 3 to 5.
That's what's up. Let me know, because I might be off, so maybe I can take some pictures for you or something.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're around the corner. And I am AJ Woodson on the board, and talking about what we did this week. Of course, holding it down for the site. Had a lot of interesting stuff. Make sure you check out blackwestchester.com, news with a black point of view. We got a lot of good content on there. I started this new part-time job. I had to be chief, need no sleep, and working like 5 shifts back to back to back to back, but I'm here today. You know what I'm saying? So that's it. Just very, very, just the usual, working and fighting the power and holding down the site. Word up. But what I want to comment
on the Selma thing. I just want to talk about that a little bit more.
I want to speak specifically about them doing it wrong. What I was saying is, at the time they had, the resources they had, they didn't have social media and all the things we have now. Like, they were so much limited with what they had to communicate with and everything, and they did it right.
Yeah.
And we have all this other stuff to make it more organized and to reach more people, and it's not getting
I think a lot of the thing have to do with hunger, man. And
that's
no, a lot of it.
Commitment.
Oh, wait a minute, y'all missing the point. A lot of it has to do with the black church. The black church.
I'm speaking specifically about the black church.
Right, the black church is different then than it is now.
Well, that's true.
The black church is not the center of information.
That's what I'm talking
for revolution or change.
That's what I'm talking about.
The black church back then was the center for political involvement. Right. The black church today is not that center anymore. Now, I don't care.
The only thing is the center of is white politicians coming in.
Only thing is the center of is getting grants. And I'm not saying all of them, but the majority of them. The only thing is the center of is getting grants from these politicians and these government bodies, and they stay quiet when you want to talk about issues. Let's just take Westchester for instance, and let's parallel it with Martin Luther King and the Selma video. Now, we know from history that MLK spoke out against segregation, voting rights, anything that trampled on people's rights, right? Now, here we are in Westchester. We know for a fact that Rob Astorino has been promoting a segregated Westchester to the point that the federal government have been withholding grants and monies from the county. And those grants and monies go to the community. Basically, those monies go to the community of color as far as after school after school programs, child care, and all those other different programs that a lot of people of color and a lot of poor people in Westchester need and they use. Where has been the outright pushback against Astorino from the black pastors? And I'm not pointing at one specific black pastor, but where has the pushback come from? You know, we got to ask the question. If Martin was here today, would he be marching in Westchester County? For sure. For sure. See, but we got a lot of black pastors that's going to claim Martin, but they're not going to do the work like Martin because it's all about the number sign. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not calling anyone or personally saying anything to anybody, but if the shoe fits, wear it. And like what we talked about earlier, AJ, like Malcolm said, if you throw a rock in a pack of dogs, and the first one to holler is the one who got hit. So
if you're offended by this,
if you're offended by this, then
we're
talking about you. We're talking about you because I haven't seen no group of black pastors standing in the front of the county building denouncing Rob Astorino for upholding a segregated Westchester. But see, they don't have a problem building low-income housing in Mount Vernon or in the black communities, but yet they fight like tooth and nails when the government say, hey, listen, you got to put low-income housing or you got to put housing that people can afford in Scarsdale and Hartsdale and all the white neighborhoods. Then he fight like hell, but then no black person say anything. And this has been going on for too long. But nobody's saying anything. So when you sit and you watch the movie Selma, you see the change in the black church. When they had the rallies in the movie Selma was at the black churches. Where have those rallies where have those rallies been? They ain't been in the black churches. Most of the rallies that we have in Westchester County is in the streets. You get a few black churches that will do it, but the majority of them been in the streets. And not one black preacher in Westchester County has called out Astorino publicly. There's a lot of good pastors out there, and I think the good pastors need to come together because the bad pastors is giving pastors a bad name.
The black church a bad name, period, as a whole.
Well, and this is not just Westchester. What I'm talking about, this is nationally. Nationally. What the hell we doing marching in D.C. for an independent special prosecutor when it's the governor that is the one that passes the bill? What we doing in D.C.?
Because it looks good.
We need to be in Albany. If we not going to Albany, Martin Luther King's agenda was to change legislation. Someone get on the phone, ask Al Sharpton how many bills has he changed in New York since he's been marching and rallying.
718-705-4959.
How many bills has he changed in New York marching and rallying? Martin changed legislation. He forced the hand of President Johnson. How many of these civil rights leaders are forcing the hand of Cuomo? Cuomo went through the whole election and didn't even mention these deaths of black kids. He didn't even mention until his inaugural address, and he barely mentioned that. We need to wake up. We need to really wake up.
All right, so there apparently is a change in the black churches. We all agreed with that.
Yes.
Right, but there's like the purpose of church then compared to the purpose of church now.
Right.
At that time, there was a need to come together. Even though now there is a need to come together, but some odd reason, individuals get comfortable because they're able to go out and buy trinkets.
Because they carved out their little power structure, their little whatever, and they don't want to merge with somebody else. They want to keep their little power structure.
Right.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, Bob Law's trying to get in.
All right.
So I don't know what's going on. We need to.
All right.
We need to fix it
right now.
Like that up there like that.
Oh, is that him? Hello?
Hello, this is Bob Law.
Hey, brother.
How you
I'm
doing,
glad.
brother?
I'm glad you can make it. We was just, and I'm glad because you could really chime in on this. We were just talking about the movie Selma, and what was different from now and then, and one of the things we was discussing was the difference in the role of the churches in the black community back then and the black community now. And I would love for you to expound on that for the readers.
Listeners.
So you ready for me
Listen.
now?
Yes, sir, brother.
Yes,
we ready
sir.
for you right now,
You
man.
are on the air. Welcome to People Before Politics, my brother.
I'm glad to be with you. All right. It's a good question. It's a good point to bring up. In that day, the black church saw itself as a tool of liberation for oppressed people. There's a song that comes out of the black church that says, I'm pressing on the upward way. New heights I'm gaining every day. I'm upward bound. Lord, plant my feet on higher ground. See, that's part of the black religious experience in a very real sense. And the black religious experience has been as a tool and an instrument of liberation. The black religious experience has always taught against oppression, although there are people who like to talk about the black religious experience as being only a tool of oppression. But it really, if you look at the actual practice of the black church throughout our history in this country, the black church had been a basis for liberation and saw itself as a liberating tool, as a liberation instrument. And so back in the movement in the 60s, and even before that, but in the movement in the 60s in particular, it was the black church that became the platform that that the movement stood on, articulating the goals and aspirations of the movement. And it was in the black church that the rightfulness of our cause was clearly established, because black people who were afraid of white people, and black people who were afraid of the physical violence of racism, because, you know, to register to vote, you could get killed.
That's right.
And you could have, when the fight that we were involved in the 60s was a fight for small stuff, public accommodations, being able to sit in a waiting room at a bus terminal. For doing things like that, you could get killed. And many of our people did.
Right.
Many black people were killed. I know in the film Selma tends to look at the white people who were victims and the white people who were killed, but it's the Oprah Winfrey film, so it'll do that, you know. But it was dangerous for black people,
Right.
and so they were afraid, and so but they had faith in the church. They had faith in the pastor, who they understood to be a man of God. So they had faith, and that faith was kindled in the church. And so that was the role that the church played at that time as a refuge and as a fortress in this struggle for liberation in whatever forms it was going to take. The difference now is that the church has moved from a position of liberation to a position of prosperity. And the church says now that God wants you to be rich and God wants you to prosper.
Prosperity preaching.
Right. That's the prosperity gospel doctrine. Prosperity. Right.
The prosperity preaching. Now, there's and as with all things, there's some truth in all of that. God wants you to prosper. He doesn't want you to be poverty-stricken. He doesn't want you to be downtrodden. But you have to preach the whole gospel.
Right.
Right.
If you're going to preach the gospel, you have to preach the whole thing. He wants you to prosper. He also said, if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray, turn from their evil ways and seek my face, give up doing wrong, and seek my face, which means to seek my will, my rule, and live righteously. Then you will hear from heaven, and I will heal your land. So the black church back then understood that and was saying to people, turn from your evil ways. That's part of our ministry, but our ministry is also prophetic. And the prophetic part of the ministry says that we shall be free. We are intended to be free. We have to, another song from the church said, onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war.
Right.
With the cross of Jesus going on before. Another song said, I will hold up the blood-stained banner, even if I have to die. I'm reaching, so the church came from that kind of warrior tradition, which is not at all what the church says for the most part, because there are still churches that are relevant, but for the most part, the churches today have moved away from warrior, have moved away from providing critical leadership. See, black folk now, as you can see, are faced with the same questions. Martin Luther King said, where do we go from here, chaos or community? Well, we're faced with the same question. In that day, the church tried to answer that question. In this day, the church generally ignores the contemporary reality and says that if you just make yourself happy, just do whatever you want to do, and don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, and just live your life in what makes you comfortable, whatever makes you happy, and become prosperous. And if you become prosperous, then you know you are doing God's will, which leads to the preachers of L.A. and all of those kind of guys. And it's not that every prosperity preacher is saying anything bad, but they don't tend to preach the whole gospel. So, because the kind of things that the church says now, and it's not just the black church, it's the whole evangelical church. A lot of them are very, very right-wing. I mean, they're straight up racist. And but the message in the church being that there's a power in you that cannot be denied. Well, see, that kind of message is very popular, very easy to digest. People love to hear that. There's a power in you that cannot be denied. It's the same thing the motivators say.
It takes away the responsibility, your responsibility, too.
It takes away your responsibility to do anything, but more so, it takes away the it moves you away from understanding and holding accountable the people and the forces that are responsible for your oppressive condition.
Absolutely.
So it suggests that you are oppressed up to the point where you can tap into the power in you. And as long as you are still suffering, it means that you have not adequately tapped into your own power.
Right.
And see, and that is the setup that allows for oppression to continue. And back in the day, the church said that the reason that you are oppressed is because of white supremacy. And now and here's how we need to deal with white supremacy. So there are people who at that time did disagree as to how to deal with white supremacy, but the church was at least helping you understand that it wasn't because of you
right.
and errors in judgment. And it wasn't because when the church taught back in the 60s that you need to tap into the power with you, the power within was to give you the power, the courage, but the power to keep on pressing, to keep reaching for higher ground. See, the power in you is the power that's going to sustain you through this struggle. But there is a struggle.
Right.
The church nowadays says something very different.
Right. Now, how do we, Brother Bob? How do we, as younger generations, how do we get around that? Because if you look at the protests, it's like the protests they're happening, but what is the change? what is the game changer? Within the movie, Martin had a goal. We're going to change legislation. We're going to force Johnson to change legislation. They knew that the governor wasn't going to do it. So, but they exposed the governor to force Johnson into doing it. And even Johnson didn't want to do it, to be honest about it. But when we see all the marches, all the rallies, and it reminds me of the Occupy Wall Street. They were all over the country, but it really didn't change legislation. It brought awareness, but it didn't force the politicians to actually change legislation. Now, how can young people today, get to the point that we're actually changing legislation or forcing them to change legislation?
Yeah. The first is important that people understand that the young people who are in the streets around this country are these are the young Americans who are marching for justice. They are being characterized as protesters who are anti-police, and that is a very deliberate distortion on the part of corporate media, as to avoid looking at the contradictions that these demonstrations are exposing.
Right.
And so, because I know some folk from the movement of the 60s who just sent a letter to some of the organizers of those movements in the street and around the country that says those who love freedom are still on the journey, because these young people in the street now are part of a historical legacy. They're in their 20s. And I remember when I was in my 20s, I was in the street, as were a whole number of people from SNCC and CORE and other kind of political organizations, students down in Tuskegee, Alabama. Gwen Patton, one of those Tuskegee students, is one of the people who signed this letter to those young people. The letter ends by saying, from Memphis to Montgomery, from Nashville to New York, we were there. And now, from Selma to St. Louis, from Birmingham to Brooklyn, we stand in solidarity with the young people who have resolved not to be silenced in their current pursuit of a fair and just society. It needs to be clear to people what's going on in the street.
Right.
And so they are not confused by how the media and some posturing politicians have been trying to exploit even the murder of the innocent policeman.
Right.
I don't know how many people actually think that the police force, that the New York City police force really loved and embraced that Asian and Latino cop when they were alive.
That's right.
I don't know how many people really think that was going on. But in their death, the police force, along with their friends in the media, are actually exploiting their death to try to turn it into a political initiative, to turn opinion against the young people in the street. But to come more so to your question, see, as we look at Dr. King, and one of the things that we learn, we understand, is that it is time for us now to take the next step. As each year, when we start to celebrate Dr. King's birthday, the theme very often is taking the next step. And that is what we are doing here in New York on January 15th.
Right.
At Mist in Harlem. We need everybody to come out to Mist in Harlem, which is at 46 West 116th Street. I know you brothers are going to be there and be part of the program. We need everybody to come out, because to answer your question means taking the next step means that the rest of the society, of the society really, but it will be the responsibility of the black community, and we like it like that. We say that we may not get justice in this society, but we are so very proud to be the ones who continue to fight for it.
Right.
We are so proud to be the ones. We may not get it, but we're the ones who will continue to fight for it. And so taking the next step means how do we get the leverage that is necessary? Because the rightfulness of our cause and how well we can articulate it does not resonate with the stiff-necked, hard-hearted people that we are struggling against.
That's right.
And so we are not able, because if we could just talk to them, we would have been free of all racism back in the 1960s, because James Baldwin and John Killens and Lorraine Hansberry and all of those folks, they were extremely articulate.
Yes, they
and
were. Yes,
they were committed to talking to white folk. They
Right.
went to every debate. They participated in every conversation.
Right.
You know, they were being interviewed by hostile white interviewers like the guy named William Buckley.
Yeah.
But if it was based on the rightfulness of the cause and how well it could be stated, we would have won then. It didn't, because we're talking to a stiff-necked, hard-hearted, wicked people. Let's just be clear.
Yes,
and
sir.
so one of the things that we need to do is to find another leverage, something else that will give us leverage. And I don't know if the film deals with Selma, so it may not have spent any considerable time dealing with the advent of Martin Luther King, which happened in Montgomery, Alabama. And in Montgomery, Alabama, the very first thing King ever did, it wasn't his idea, it was E.D. Nixon, a union organizer and a member of the NAA back then, but it was economic sanctions, where they asked black folk not to ride the buses. There would be no demonstrations trying to convince white folk to let black people ride on the bus. They arrested Rosa Parks because she...
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare.
That's right.
They thought that they couldn't sustain it. What are these Negroes talking about? We don't have to worry. Some 300 days later, the owners of the bus company was saying, Dr. King, what time will you be in your office?
That's right.
We need to come and talk this over, because we're about to go out of business. And see, there are corporations and there are products and there are industries, even now, that take black dollars totally for granted and put no money back in support of our community or in support of our struggle for equity. Because, see, corporations and industries take political positions. Because the guy who owned the chicken place, who came out against gay folk, you know, and then the gay folks say, oh, yeah, okay, well, now you're going to find out how many gay folk eat that chicken, because we're going to stop everybody from eating your chicken. Everybody goes immediately to where their power is. Black people have not done that. We have our initiatives have most often been to protest the injustice, and the protest is really very helpful by way of making people aware of the injustice, because some of this stuff that we deal with on a daily basis is really very subtle, and many black people don't even realize the extent to which racism is still affecting our lives. So the protests are really helpful. See, as a result of these protests in the street, people have begun to do even more research and looking into, well, what is the relationship between the police and the black community? We now know that the protests are over unarmed black men being killed by the police.
Right.
Then the research continues. We now know that the police kill a young black man every 28 hours
Yes.
in this country. So we didn't know that before. the protests help bring that to light. And so there's a role for the protests. However, in order to affect change, we have to say, here's precisely what we want. And we're prepared to explain that at this No Justice, No Profit sanctions rally on Thursday.
Okay, Bob, I just want to interrupt you because I just want to make sure that I have that information in regards to No Justice, No Profit rally.
Mm-hmm.
I need to make sure that I have the information correct.
Can you repeat the...
Wait, hold on. I just want to tell them what I have. So I have No Justice, No Profit rally on January 15th. And we're talking about taking the next step. And it's at 46 West 116th Street, Harlem, New York. What time?
It is from 6:30 to 8:30.
Okay.
And the place is called Mist.
The Mist. Right.
Mist, M-I-S-T. And there's a phone number you can call if you need directions how to get there. And also, it's absolutely free. And so, as are the rallies are free, we have a need to take up an offering. That's a free will offering because this campaign is going to require a lot of work. It is going to require a lot of materials, buttons, posters. This on the 15th is step one, announcing it, explaining it, and we will have to explain it again and again and move it all around the city. It's also being launched in Kansas City on that same day, and it is to grow and build from city by city as we go on into the rest of the winter, spring, and summer. And the blueprint for this comes from the Kansas City Black United Front, which organized economic sanctions in Kansas City. They targeted tourism in Kansas City, and over a period of about 3 or 4 years, they were able to actually achieve every single goal that they put on the table, even to restructuring the police department.
Right.
Because when they began to hold back on the money, and as people began to support that and hold back on the money, when it became no justice, no profit, then the policymakers were willing to come and talk, and that is what is going to happen here. We're going to have a hard struggle because the moderates, the NAACP is going to try to block it. The Urban League is going to try to block it. The moderates, there's some political personalities in the city. We're not, as you can see, we're not opposed to naming who, and we don't know the political personalities for sure. We suspect, but we got to give them a minute anyway. But if they do, we will name them and say exactly what it is that they are doing, but they are going to try to undermine this. If we say, for instance, that black developers in New York City who now get 1% of the city's procurement contracts, which is something like $17 billion that the city spends, from a report just released by the Comptroller's office. And the Comptroller acknowledges that it is a racial disparity and that it is unfair, unjust. Black people get 1% because the black people are included in the minority category. And so the minorities get, I think, 3.5%. Out of that group, black people get about 1%. Well, when we say that, therefore, we want you to give black developers, say, 20%. See, the people who are going to try to undermine us, they're going to go to the city and say, listen, you don't have to give as much as 20%. Why don't you just give 5% to this group that we got over here? And then this group will do a press conference and take photos with the mayor and shake hands and show that this group is getting, that minorities are getting a contract. We'll announce a big deal that we're going to get the contract to rebuild something somewhere and in the black community to undermine what these other people are doing. So you don't have to give black developers 20, give us 5, and we'll talk about it like you gave us 55. And see, that's what they have been doing up to now. But so we go to our people first, which is what this rally is on Thursday. It is a Martin Luther King Jr. Community Forum taking the next step, announcing economic sanctions to combat racism in New York City. No justice, no profit.
That's right.
That is going to make a difference when you say, what can we do? I believe that that is going to make a difference. With the young people who are in the street right now holding up signs that say, I can't breathe. What if they were holding up signs saying, stay out of the fast food restaurants, no justice, no profit? See, that's going to make a real difference. See, black people eat more fast food than any other ethnic group in the country.
Right.
Black fast food restaurants are all throughout the black community, and the food is really harmful. But before we even get to the food, corporations take political positions. They support things that they believe in. When the policemen were murdered, JetBlue, a corporation, said that they would fly policemen in for free from various places around the country in order to show their support for the police in general. They take a political position. They have a right to do that if they want to do that. Corporations take political positions. Other corporations have done the same thing. Revlon has built a breast cancer research center on the campus at UCLA, even though black women spend twice as much as white women on beauty products, even though black women have the highest or have the lowest survival rate from breast cancer in this country. But Revlon, who makes enormous money from black people, put the research center on the campus at UCLA. They didn't put it on the campus at Spelman, where the black women are.
Right.
See, they make political decisions. We say, so fine, you have a tradition of making political decisions, but wonder why it is that you have never taken a position in support of our struggles for equity in this society. You just take our money, but you don't put any money back. They need to put the money, I'm going too fast. Now you look at McDonald's and Wendy's, Burger King. A couple of years ago, Burger King executives said that now in the new post-racial America, it was no longer necessary to hire anyone to appeal directly to black for their consumer dollars. So we're going to fire the black ad agency who we had hired to take our message to the black community. See, since it's post-racial and you don't have to have an agency based on race, then why didn't they fire the white agency?
Right.
And let the black agency take the messages to blacks and whites. But they fired the black agency on the racist assumption that only the white agency was capable of talking to both black and white people. So they fired the black agency, hired a white agency, and then announced that they were going to increase the budget by 30%, which means that they knew all the time that they were not giving the black agency enough money to get the job done. Now that they're giving it to a white agency, they're going to increase the budget to make it even more profitable and more possible for the white agency to succeed. So, but when you see, that's what I mean by this stuff is subtle. Many people don't know that. So we're up in Burger King when Burger King has just engaged in a classic racist maneuver. We look at McDonald's. McDonald's has a black president. Does that mean that McDonald's buys potatoes from black farmers? Not at all.
That's right.
You know, does it mean that McDonald's has any money in a development fund in the black community? Does it mean that McDonald's spends money in black media? Does it mean that McDonald's does business with black attorneys and accountants and the people who they buy aprons and caps and all the things that they buy? Are they making a point to do business with black entrepreneurs since they have a black president? Not at all. They just take our money. We are told that the average McDonald's in the black community selling food that is dangerously high in sodium, they have a black president. Does that mean that the quality of food being offered to the black community is better? Not at all. And so when we look at a company like McDonald's, we are told that the average McDonald's in the black community, each individual store, on average, makes about $25,000 a day. So much money they take out of the black community. But none of that goes back into black banks, black media, into black businesses, into into a development fund that is controlled by black folk, that is targeted to repairing the damage that policy has created in the black community. And so we say, listen, economic sanctions, first, stop spending your money so recklessly to begin with.
That's right.
Just reconsider all spending. You know, it is clear that African Americans will have to go beyond only marching and move to effectively organizing our resources to influence and change this nation's corporate and political policies. We can start by taking control of our trillion-dollar consumer spending and use our money in a strategic and disciplined manner. And see, what has thrown black folk off is that for years we've been led to believe that it's how much you spend that demands respect. So we are trying to outspend everybody, and we do. We outspend everybody in every category. We invented bling-blinging. We invented everything that are in terms of consumerism. But we understand better now that reckless spending is not the passport to respect or equity. It is when you refuse to spend that you begin to influence corporate and political policy. So we're saying, first, stop spending recklessly, period, everywhere. Hold on to your money. Make where you spend your money a political decision. I understand that Dick Gregory was speaking, I think, out in the Midwest. He was in Kansas City, I believe, and he was saying everybody ought to start buying half a tank of gas. Don't fill up the car no more. Everybody buy half a tank. Run out of that, buy another half a tank. Let the money start to decline. See how these corporations will respond. Well, we're taking it a little bit beyond waiting to see how they will respond. We've got some goals, both legally and legislatively, as well as in terms of economic development and how we want to see these corporations reinvest money back into the building of the infrastructure in the black community. No more nickel and dime charities, no more gospel music, McDonald's Gospel Music Fest, where they give away $5,000 or $10,000. They got some nerve. Every black choir in the country has to compete from all over the country, and they win $5,000 or $10,000 after the whole long competition. And there's even something much more meaningful that they could do with that gospel contest. We'll talk about that as well. They could make it a much more meaningful initiative on behalf of gospel music and gospel choirs and the winning choir. It could be much, much more productive and profitable for the people who are involved. But they give us chump change. They give us little nickels and dimes, and then and as a result, they benefit, but they do not put any. For instance, look at the brother who in Brooklyn, New York, who was killed in the Pink housing project out in Brownsville, East New York.
Right.
Everybody acknowledges that it was a tragic accident. He was not involved in any wrongdoing. He never should have been shot in the first place. Nobody's talking about that case much anymore.
Nope, not at all.
But everybody admitted that he should not have been shot. Now, he had a child as well who has no father. Well, no corporation stepped up to say that they will take care of the education of his child.
That's right.
Like they have stepped up, like the New York Yankees have stepped up to say they will take care of the education of those innocent policemen. But nobody stepped up to say that. Not Nike.
That's a good point.
With all of the money that young black men spend on Nike, Nike acknowledges that young black men are the driving force behind their success. Not only do young black men buy far too many shoes, they influence sales globally. And so, but Nike didn't step up and say, well, young black men, your support us so solid. Your support for us is so solid. We're going to have to put up some money and help that young man's family. They didn't say that. Neither did the NAACP. Neither did the Urban League. Neither did the black political personalities. Neither, the people who will do a benefit concert for AIDS. They will do a benefit concert for Sandy victims, storm victims, whatever white people approve of. You've got Jay-Z, Beyonce, Smokey Robinson, anything that white people approve of, they're down with that. But white people hadn't announced that somebody ought to help the family of the brother who was killed by that policeman in Brooklyn. So nobody stepped up to say, well, we'll do on his behalf. So we want to begin to say to all of those people, no more, no justice, no profit.
Right.
You can't take our dollars for granted anymore. You're going to have a concert. You're going to be down at the Barclays Center, your favorite place. You're going to be selling tickets. We ain't coming. No justice, no profit.
Right. And I think we have to start thinking like that. We haven't talked that type of talk in a long time, Bob.
Yeah, absolutely. And so now it is, but that is how we see really honoring the legacy of Martin Luther King, and really it's honoring the legacy of our movement for freedom. You know, the film and history attempt to characterize the civil rights movement as a movement that was all Martin Luther King Jr. The same way that history sums Dr. King up as the I Have a Dream speech. You know,
Right.
and people call it, just as an example, people call it the I Have a Dream speech.
Right, that's not
Yes.
it wasn't.
There was no I Have a Dream speech. He
Right.
never gave an I Have a Dream speech.
Right.
I Have a Dream was one of his favorite speech closings. He had given it before.
Right.
A couple of weeks before the March on Washington, he did it again in Detroit. And I understand that some of his advisors, I think it might have been Y.T. Walker, and at least Y is the one who told us this story, had said to him, when we get to the March on Washington, Doc, please don't use that tired I have a dream closing.
Yeah, that's right.
And he said okay. When he got there, he looked out and he could feel it. He's a preacher, and
Right.
so he felt it. And he said, "No, this is I have a dream, America." He went on into it,
Right.
and that is how he is summed up. But the speech prior to that closing was a speech that dealt with a whole lot more than dreaming. And he talked specifically, and he talked about the allocation of money. And he
that's
talked
right.
he
That's
talked
right.
much more so about things that were programmatic that would make a difference in this society. All of that is ignored. But to ignore that is deliberate. So that is why we say, see, the movement was not a movement only about Dr. King. Dr. King had some great people in the movement with him, Reverend Abernathy, Joseph Lowry, Andrew Young, Fred Shuttlesworth, some names that people don't know, Ella Baker. You know, he had some great people in that movement with him, and they were very much responsible for the dynamic or the dynamism, the power of that movement.
Right.
You know,
right.
King was not the only drum major for justice.
Right.
And there were others. And then there were the young people and organizations like SNCC and the people here in the north, along the northeast corridor. There was organizations like CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality. I mean, CORE was the primary activist organization in this along up and down the East Coast, challenging these contradictions. There was Gloria Richardson in Cambridge, Maryland. You know, there was Fannie Lou Hamer in on down into Mississippi. There was a movement with some of the most talented and the most courageous, creative young people on the planet. And that is the movement whose legacy we continue to extend, and it is and it is the legacy of that movement that the young people in the street right now are trying to catch up to.
Right.
And
Right.
so we that's why people from that movement wanted to make it clear to them that those who love freedom are still on the journey. We're still with you.
Now, Bob, let me ask you a question. There have been a lot of friction between the young people, the young outspoken people from a lot of these organizations, and the civil rights leaders that are out of the forefront that get the press. There was also a YouTube video that was circulated where it basically is directed to Al Sharpton and is basically, you know, giving the respect of the work of Al Sharpton, but basically, asking him to pass the baton, and
you don't speak for us,
right? And you don't really speak. You're not speaking for us. How can you say that you're speaking for us? And then it went into, at the end, the old saying, old men for counsel, young men for war. Advise us, let us do the work.
Right, that's what I was saying. They, unlike a lot of other people that said he don't speak, they said, we want you to mentor us. We want you to advise us, show us what to do, and let us do it how we do it. Let us speak to our people. So
Bob, how are the elders that wrote that letter, and yourself and other people who see the need in what the young people doing, how can you bridge that gap? So everybody is working on one accord and working towards a specific goal.
Mm-hmm. It is not going to be necessary for everybody to be working on one accord.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It is when one of the people that I mentioned when I talked about the good people that Martin Luther King had around him, I mentioned a sister named Ella Baker. Ella Baker is considered the mother of SNCC. She was one of the adults in SCLC. Mm-hmm. When SCLC tried to get the young people to stuff envelopes and to just follow their lead. Mm-hmm. And so those young people said, we need to have our own organization. We're not really asking King or anybody else to pass the baton. Nobody has to pass the baton to anybody. Mm-hmm. If you want to be involved in this movement, pick up the baton and start moving forward.
Okay.
Stop waiting for somebody to sanction your own growth and development. And Ella Baker worked very much so to help the young people organize. And she was and still is greatly respected by the people who were in SNCC. Greatly respected. But in each instance, here in the North, as the Black Power movement began to emerge, what we said is that we want to do things differently. But we were not, now, the leadership at that time that disagreed, see, the leadership at that time was committed very much to integration and assimilation. Now, here comes the Black Power movement, talking about do for self,
Right.
But we don't want to get black women on the cover of Vogue magazine. We want to publish our own magazine.
Right.
And there were people, I was involved in some of those debates. There were people who told us no, that the goal is to white acceptance. The goal is integration and assimilation. They used to say there's only a few bad apples in the barrel. We're trying to get the few out because most of the apples in the American barrel are good apples. So no, and they struggled against self-determination. There's a young brother who was doing a documentary. I think he's still working on it. He came to interview me as a member of CORE, and he showed me some footage of some of the interviews he had done with some of the white folks who were still around from Brooklyn CORE. And those white people said that it was the Black Power movement that destroyed CORE. See, not racism, not discrimination, racism, not institutionalized racism that kept crushing and beating down on us. The Black Power movement destroyed it. The Black Power movement destroyed the civil rights movement, is what they said. Not the white folk fighting against the civil rights movement. And so we ran into that. That's why we said in this open letter, when we hear this stuff, it sounds familiar. Because that's the same stuff they said to us when we were in the street.
Right.
But what we said was that we will. Now, what we did when we had those discussions, we had a lot of discussions with prominent moderates, James Baldwin, and all of those people, and we actually nudged them a little bit further toward our position of self-determination, nationalism. But they were born and raised in America. Understand that. They came up in the 20s and 30s and, came up in the 40s and stuff. They were committed to integration and assimilation. And so it was hard for them to make enough of an adjustment. But we understood that, we appreciated that. They understood and appreciated where we were coming from, and we did learn from them, and we did sit in council with them. But they were, the council with W.E.B. Du Bois, as much better than counseling with any of these people that y'all are talking about now.
Right.
So when you look at some of the people that we go to sit and talk to, John Killens, sitting in his living room in Brooklyn, some of those people that we went to talk and counsel with, those were some real thought leaders, and they were really principled. They just disagreed with the goal, but and in a lot of cases they came around to our position. They didn't do it right away, but many of them began to come around to our position. But they were people who had a principled difference with us. They weren't people who were saying, no, don't do it, because they were being paid by major corporations.
Right.
They weren't people who were saying, I'm going to get in front of the movement because some corporate leaders and some politicians had instructed them to get in front of the movement and deter the movement. They went to meet with Robert Kennedy, Lorraine Hansberry, and James Baldwin. I don't know who else was in the meeting, but they were up in his face, and he was in their face. And when they left, they were very, very disappointed. They thought that Kennedy was really, really progressive. They pushed him. They, made some demands. They saw how much he was not as legit as history sums him up.
Right.
But they were serious, but they didn't go to sell us out. They went to push for what they wanted. Now, our disappointment was that when they had these meetings, they would push for stuff that we thought was meaningless. So, but they were not crooked, not all of them. They were, and so I think that young people need to do a little research, but make sure they know who's who, what they really stand for. Like when we did this open letter, the feedback that we got was that the organizers who saw it were really received it well and wanted to have a conversation. Good. Wanted to know if we could get together, and they said absolutely.
That's great.
And the reason that they saw it is that I had already had a conversation with one of the key organizers of the protest, and he is the one who put it in the hands of other people in that movement. And so we are absolutely open to and eager to talk, but I would say, and I've seen some other statements that have been sent, I don't know if they have seen them, that is offering advice on how to organize. But here's what we said, that if y'all want to march, then march. We're not going to tell you not to march. I think it's time to take the next step, economic sanctions,
right,
using our economic leverage. But I'm not saying do that instead of march. I'm saying do that in addition to marching. So if y'all are going to march, we will organize the economic sanctions campaign. We're just asking you to support the economic sanctions campaign the way we support your being in the street.
Right,
so that'll work.
Right.
But they don't have to stop marching. They don't, and more so, they don't have to wait for somebody to pass the baton, because the people that they want to pass there are people who they want to pass the baton to them. Well, the people that they're asking don't have the baton. See, the baton was dropped on stage at the Audubon Ballroom.
Wow.
See, the baton was dropped on a balcony in Memphis, Tennessee.
Oh, my God.
These folk that they're talking to now don't have any baton. That's why they can't pass it to you. Pick up the baton and start moving forward. Pick it up.
I do want to say what Damon articulated is not true. That's what they're saying. They're saying he doesn't represent. They showed who their leaders are. They said they are, you know what I'm saying? They're telling him to step back and get out of their way, basically.
Right.
That's what their message is. They're not asking for his permission. They said they wouldn't receive counsel if he wants, but they're not. They're telling him step back. You don't speak
Well,
for us. We have our leaders, and we're out here doing this, and you're distracting people from us. That's exactly what that message was. Yeah.
I got it. Here's the point. There is a lot for them still to learn.
Absolutely.
But that's why I said they have to be careful who they ask to teach.
That's absolutely
because you can't teach what you don't know.
That's
See,
right.
you can't be the leader trying to lead where you won't go.
Right.
See,
Right.
you have to be careful. I know if Charles Barron says that sometimes we ask for meetings with the wrong people, and he said, and the reason and the problem with having a meeting with the wrong people is you might have a good meeting where where they agree, yeah, I'm down with this. Yeah, let's work together. Now you have to start working with people who intend to double cross you all the time. You never should have had a meeting with them in the first place. It's like there's a minister out in St. Louis who said with economic sanctions, one of the targets that she would like to see is the liquor industry. Let's tell black people to stop drinking liquor and smoking cigarettes. I say that's fine. Easy for me to say because I don't drink. But I say, but here's what happens. Since we have a movement that is pressing for, it's not to be symbolic, it's pressing for some specific goals, reinvesting in the black community. What happens if the liquor people say, well, okay, you're all right, we'll reinvest in the black community. Well, now, Reverend, you have to enter into a partnership with the liquor company because you had a good meeting, and they agreed to work with you in reinvesting in the black community. So now black people are free to start buying liquor again, and you have to help work with the liquor company. Well, see, you never should have met with them in the first place.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so you have to be careful who you even decide to meet with and who you ask for counsel. But even more so, it is independent study as well. Is pick up some books and
Right.
read.
Yes, sir.
Read and understand. Read The Making of Black Revolutionaries by Jim Foreman. He talks about the whole SNCC experience. There's a bunch of other things. Do some research, read some things, and find out about organizing and find out who some of the people are, because some of those people are still around. Gloria Richardson, who organized in Cambridge, Maryland, lives in New York City. I believe still is in New York City. And
that's what I was going to ask you. For those that are listening, because we would like to think we have some of them listening. So for those that are listening and who may see this later on the show or on the site, who are some of the people that they need to look up? I think you started going into that list, so they know, because if they don't know, they don't know.
Yep. See, it's I don't know all the people who are still around, but I know, and what we can do is find out how they can be in touch. Actually, we can even facilitate such a meeting. Like if the young people who said that they want to meet with me after seeing the letter, if they actually want to do that, and I'm dealing with this brother Lumumba Bindeli, good brother, like this young brother, and if he actually can set up, if I can set that up and find some of the people who are here right now who would be very willing to talk to them and to even suggest some things that they can study on their own, looking at there's a history of organizing, and it's a newer time now. When we were in the street, there was no such thing as Twitter.
That's what I was saying now. Yeah.
Right.
There was no such thing as email messages, and we have to go out in the street and pass out leaflets. However, it is helpful to understand marketing, to understand see, we always lose the battle in the arena of public opinion. We always lose that battle. The media puts their spin on everything. In the film Selma, I understand there's a scene in the film where Coretta King had a meeting with Malcolm.
Yes.
And Martin King was annoyed.
He got upset.
And he said something about how he talks about us. And, what are you, enamored by him? Look, that stuff didn't happen. King, see, if the script were going to be pure, since they were making that stuff up, the King was a person who believed in talking to the enemy. He believed that he said the best way to defeat hate is to love the hater. So if he thought Malcolm was coming too hard, and if he thought Malcolm's position was too fierce, or if he thought Malcolm was preaching hate, King's strategy, according to all the things that King has ever been quoted as saying, it would have followed more logically that King would have been willing to talk with Malcolm, thinking that he could win Malcolm over, that he could have his message would have the power of love, and that he could win Malcolm over. He would not have been a person who would have been opposed to talking to Malcolm. And according to everything you ever read about him.
Right.
But I never heard of a meeting between Malcolm and Coretta King. But the movie shows King to be a little jealous, right? It shows King to be a little intolerant. See, that's Oprah Winfrey and the white boy who did the movie. That stuff is those kind of things are done. It's almost like, it's like when you take a position. There's a thing in film that is called an escape valve. There was a play called The Soldier Story, and The Soldier Story was about the oppression of black troops and the murder of a black sergeant and a black officer sent in to investigate. Now, the play is very, very intense, dealing with the racism and the bigotry, the intolerance in the military and in the South where these soldiers were stationed. Then they made it into a film, right? When they did the film, there was Robert Townsend played the role of the black investigating officer's driver. And he was kind of comedic. He was cracking jokes, and that character did not exist in the play. That character was invented for the film,
right,
because the film was intended for a general audience, and the general audience should not be challenged to think as critically as the theater-going audience, which is seen as being a little bit more sophisticated. And the general audience was not supposed to leave the theater angry. The general audience had to have a number of things happening in the film that allows them to, as the escape valve, to get some of the pressure and anger that they're feeling has to escape. So the comedic character is invented to play off some of the things that happen. So people in the audience start laughing and kind of calm back down. In that film, Selma, there are things in there as well that are designed to kind of help people breathe. When they don't get but too angry, you're getting so angry, so sympathetic to King. So there's got to be something in here that can let you, particularly black folk watching it, and white folk as well.
Right.
White folk watching it have to be able to say, oh, well, he wasn't all that much of a saint after all. First we thought he was a saint, and oh man, but wow, look at him. He's got women. He's jealous. He's got human. See, that stuff is all put in there deliberately. That is how sophisticated media manipulation is. And that is why we have to, I would say to these young folk, don't just study marching. Read Malcolm Caldwell's book, The Outliers, and look at how opinion is shaped. Read Noam Chomsky's book, Manufacturing Consent. Begin to understand even better how the media is used to defend and support the corporate media politics. It's one of the things that we said to them in the letter. In fact, the letter opens by saying, as Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky point out in Manufacturing Consent, published in 2002, unlike the image that the corporate media offers of itself as being ubiquitous in their search for truth and justice, the media, in fact, actually defends the economic, social, and political agendas of the privileged groups that dominate domestic society. And so we have suggested in the first line a book that they might read. And so it is that kind of thing, though, that we have to do.
Yes, sir. You know what, Bob? One thing. The next time we talk on the phone, I'm going to write all these books down, and what we also going to do, yeah, brother.
we actually need to read and discuss them on the air too.
Right, and we need to discuss them on the air. We need to discuss them on the show, and we need to create a readers page on blackwestchester.com where we can suggest, we can have the links and have the pictures of the books and suggest them for people to read. So it will be something that they could go to if they want to buy a book and click on the link, and we'll send the link to wherever they could buy it. But at least have a group of books that people can empower themselves.
Bob,
here's a suggestion. Why not do like they do in school? Develop a reading list.
Right.
Say here are 5 books that you should read between now and then.
Right.
Like even in the summertime, here are 5 books you should read this summer. Or we're starting out early enough. Here are 5 books you should read between now and summer. And just develop a reading list and encourage people to read those books. But the sister wanted to comment. Can I just say this? People, I need y'all to be here at MIST on Thursday.
No, we're there, brother.
I don't mean
you talking to
people
listeners.
Right, people who are listening. I need y'all to be there too, but I need the people who are listening really come out and get the rest of this information. Let us explain to you in sufficient time economic sanctions and the rationale for sanctions and how that works.
Bob, I just have a question. So will there be information? Because what I like is when you give statistics, and statistics really help in conversation and understanding. And so when we come on Thursday, will there be any literature that's passed out in regards to facts and understanding about economic sanctions? See, I know exactly what you were talking about when it came to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. being asked to come in for Rosa Parks, and how so many days had went by and so many months have went by, and it was the almighty dollar that made them say, all right, we'll let you sit wherever you want to sit on the bus, right? And so that needs to be understood. A lot of people do not understand that aspect. A lot of people don't understand the aspect behind Jim Crow and the many different Jim Crow parts and laws that they were attacking or fighting against the entire time. So unfortunately, yes, we are in 2015, and this is not taught in school. And so there needs to be some sort of literature that is explaining in the lowest term for understanding for individuals when they're coming out, so they could also pass it on to other individuals.
Well, there's absolutely going to be literature given out. We're going to talk about and explain in almost like bullet points the things that you have just raised.
We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it.
Blacks remain the primary target for fast food giants like McDonald's and Burger King.
Yes.
We're going to we have an information package that everybody gets. We're also going to share the open letter to the young people in the street. We're going to do with that. We have another position on a rationale for no justice, no profit. We're going to give that out. We have that information. We're going to give out the information. People leave this forum, they'll be able to take information in their hand, because this event on Thursday is only step one. It is the announcement. We need then people to start talking about it, to share the information that we give, to be aware of it. We're going to have to do a lot of other things throughout the winter and the spring. We're going to have to do a lot of other things promoting this idea, selling this idea, explaining it to people, because some of it needs to be explained. But here's one of the things that we have learned. we start talking about things, we just say things like no justice, no profit. People say, yeah, I got that. it is not so baffling as already. And so what we need to do is to make it clear who the targets are, how it's going to work. First target, fast food industry as a target. However, we're asking people to take control of their spending overall on every level. Stop spending so recklessly anyway. And so we have to talk about that and explain that. But in order to be able to measure the effectiveness of what we're doing, we need to have a clearer target, and it is the fast food industry to start. There'll be others coming from the Harvest Institute in Washington, D.C. The recommendation was that there be a series of rolling boycotts, if you will, rolling sanctions. Fast food industry. Now let's look at, somebody said, what about Sony? What about Nike? What about, they're looking at other people as well who take our money and ignore us.
Right.
So we're going to change how they relate to us. But I've been trying to give out this phone number. People can call this number. What's this, Sunday? They can start calling this number tomorrow if you need information. And it would be helpful if people call just to say, I'm going to be there, because you'd like to get some idea of what to expect in terms of people. But there's a number for information. The NIST is at 46th West 116th Street. That's between Malcolm X Boulevard and 5th Avenue. Now, the phone number is 646-688-5886. And so you can call that number. I'll give it to you again if you need a minute to get a pen. I'll give it to you again in a moment. But you can call that number for whatever kind of logistical information you need, and make sure they're still on, too, because check the weather. They say it might be raining or snowing. It might be. So they can check just to make sure we fully intend to be there. It's at, the phone number again is 646-688-5886.
Okay, so I have it all. No justice,
Okay.
no profit rally on January 15th. Taking the next steps. Meeting will be held at 46 West 116th Street, Harlem, New York, from 6:30 p.m. to what time?
8:30 p.m.
Okay, that's all I need.
2 hours, and we're leaving. Even if somebody arrives at 8:15, we're leaving. They will have missed it. We're leaving at 8:30.
And the place to be is called Mist, and it's the first meeting. And the time is and the phone number is 646-688-5886.
Yes.
I got it. I'll be there. You want me to bring my signs?
Yeah.
She got a lot of them, brother. Trust
I'm the
me.
sign making queen.
Make a sign that says no justice, no profit.
I got you. I got that already.
Yeah, we need, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
Have some signs like that up. It's going to make a difference.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is.
We've done it before, and New York is a huge market now. You can do something on 34th Street in Manhattan, like when we talked about economic sanctions some years ago, and the people up on Grand Concourse in the Bronx won't even know that you were down on 34th Street. Right. If what you do is dependent on media visibility.
Right.
So the media tends to ignore things that might really make a difference. So that is why this time we really don't want to depend on the media. They may cover this or not, and when they cover it, they might try to make it sound like it is an ill-conceived idea. So we're going to have to go into communities, do this show again,
right.
Shows like this. We're going to have to come up to Westchester.
Yes, sir.
And do a sanctions community forum in Westchester. We're going to have to treat this the same way politicians do a campaign, political campaign. We've got to go into neighborhoods and go into communities and explain this to people and talk to people, and that's why we need these posters and signs. The committee that's putting this whole thing together here in New York will continue to meet and plan a marketing campaign that will consist of buttons, leaflets, posters, rallies, without it being dependent on the media. And see, one of the reasons I know that works is because, see, I'm not speculating about whether or not these tactics are effective. I'm going on what my experience has been. When Minister Farrakhan said, I want a 1 million-man march, and we began to organize with what were called local organizing committees around the country. The media absolutely ignored it. Now, we had more Black Talk Radio at that time.
Right.
But the media ignored it. They even ignored the fact that we were talking about it on Black Talk Radio. It wasn't until a couple of days before the march when they saw all the airline reservations, when they saw the railroad train cars that had been booked. There was a group of black lawyers in New York who booked 2 railroad train cars themselves.
Nice.
To book Amtrak. You know, there were people buying airline tickets. When they looked up and saw what was happening, Jimmy Breslin, who was a columnist at the time, did his column saying, how did this happen under our noses? How did this happen and we didn't know anything about this? We didn't say anything about this. The masses of the people were coming. And there were prominent political personalities. All of them said, don't go. And
that's right. That's
but
right.
Did anybody go? And one of those prominent political personalities was on television the day before the march. And he was saying, nobody should go. It's not a thing anybody should participate in. He's still saying, don't go. The day of the march, since he had credentials to get up on the stage of his own, since he was a member of Congress, he came up on the stage when I was the moderator, when I was hosting, came up on the stage behind me, kind of tiptoeing behind me, handed me a note. The note said, please tell them that I am here. Tell the crowd. See, when he woke up that morning and saw that crowd, and he saw those men, because I know I have been with the minister, I've been with some other people, I've been on stage with James Brown and stuff. I've been on stage, hosting the shows with Hank Span and Stevie Wonder. I have seen big crowds. I was with the minister when he filled up Madison Square Garden. So I've seen big crowds all the time. I walked out on that stage. I never saw a sight like that.
And it was amazing. I
when
was
I
down
looked
in the
out
crowd.
there,
Loved it.
and I saw those people out there, I was like, whoa, this is what 1 million people looks like. How many? You have never seen 1 million
Right.
people.
Right.
You know, and so
Right.
I looked at that crowd, and I was like, my goodness, look at these people. Well, this politician looking on TV said the same thing.
That's right. That's right.
Got up, got his rusty dusty down there, and said, tell them that I am here. He's been one of the people saying, don't go. But that's the same thing that's got to happen with this campaign. We've got to take it to the masses of our people, and we've got to make the point clear and drive it home. Because one of the things that we have learned, when these young people are saying that they are struggling with some moderates who are trying to take control, one of the things that we have learned is that there are some of us, there are people in this country, black folks, who are very well respected and held in high regard by the general public. And that is one of the reasons you never see us on CNN. You know,
Right.
we've never been interviewed by Bill Moyers.
Right.
Not going to be interviewed by any of these people. I was interviewed on one of those shows once. Wasn't that show? I think show 2020. And the guy was trying to get me to say that the reason black people don't prosper is because we're not willing to work as hard as other groups are. And so he kept coming with that same question from different angles. I know better than that. Then I heard him say to his producer, took a break, and he said to his producer, I can't get him to say it. I can't make him.
You can't say something that's not true. You know.
Yeah, but he was trying to say, he's trying to ask me in a tricky way.
To lead you into it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and because that's what they do. But
Right.
and because he had asked me about black people not being willing to work hard. I said, you mean not willing to work hard? I'm black and you're white. Just look at me and you. I got you're on the air. I'm on the air every day, a full 4-hour shift every day. You're on the air once a week and take all week to produce this show. And we're sitting in my bookstore. Not only am I on the air, I own a small business. I work twice as hard as you do. How are you in here talking about black people not being willing to work hard when you don't work as hard as I do?
Right,
Wow.
right.
See, and so that's why they didn't have me back. See? But a bunch of those shows, there are people. See, there are people who could articulate what we're doing very well. Maulana Karenga is one of them. Hakeem Adabuti is one of them. Sonia Sanchez is one of them. There are a number of people who could say what we have to say. Hakeem said once that you can't out-talk us. We're poets.
Right.
We can say this stuff better than you can. And we look at some of the terminology that we have used in the past. We look at some of these people, these people who are moderates who double-cross us, and we described those people once as being nothing but a stick with a ball of cotton on it for a head and a running machine for a mouth. So you can't out-talk us.
Right.
But they won't have us on these shows.
No, they won't.
And it's not that they don't know us or don't know about us. There are people that they have handpicked to speak for black people. I did a show once when I didn't know these guys. This is some years ago, and I didn't know these guys. And Hannity and Combs. I don't know if they still have a show. Right. One of them still has a show. Hannity.
Combs ain't on there anymore.
But I didn't know them. I went in, so they called the radio station and wanted me to come on the thing that I was doing about anti-violence and stuff. And so they asked me to come, and I came in the studio, and the guy said, "Well, Bob Law, I don't think that we're going to have too much that we disagree on." I said, "Okay, you know me." and then the guy said, "Your friend Gary Bird, what does he mean when he says Hotep?" I said, "No kidding, you heard of Bird and you know that he said Hotep." So I didn't even know these guys, but they knew who we were.
Right.
And they still do.
Right.
I did a show once, and whatever we were talking about, and they said, we want you to come on whatever date. They call back and say, we're postponing it. Want you to come another date. And okay, finally, we got a third date. We want you to come. I said, well, what was the problem? They said, well, we were trying to find somebody who disagrees with you. And we couldn't find anybody who disagrees. So now we have somebody. I said, here's what, I'm not coming on the air with the stuff that I'm talking about. When I decide to say it, right, it is because I am absolutely correct.
Right.
I'm absolutely right. And if anybody disagrees with me, they must be really foolish. So I'm not coming on with somebody who disagrees, because it's going to be somebody who's silly, and you're going to present me as the flip side of this silly person.
Right.
And I'm not the flip side of this person. So they said, okay, you can come on by yourself. Then when you leave, he comes on.
He comes on, right.
I said, okay, fine. That's fine. I'll do that. So we did it. I did my segment, and then we left. And on the way out, I told the brothers who will roll with me, I said, wait, let's go in the green room here, and I want to see this guy that they got who's going to disagree with me. The guy came on, the young brother. He came on and he said, first, I want to make it clear, I do not disagree with Bob Law. I said, of course not. Come on, we didn't have to stay to hear the rest of the guy. Good, let's go. Of course not. But that's the reason they don't bring me back.
Right.
But we have a need to find ways to get the visibility that we need for this movement and for this argument.
Bob, I think that is the same way when I saw the open letter to black law enforcement in Ebony magazine, which was circulated. And I reached out to some of the people that signed it, and I'm saying, black law enforcement, we've been speaking out for a long time. The problem is that the media has failed to even talk about us or even call us to come on these shows, MSNBC, CNN, and all of these shows, to really talk about the relationship with law enforcement in the black community. I mean, it's the same thing. So the average person think that, you know, the black we are just allowing all this to happen, and we're not saying anything, or not trying to, you know, inform the people, you know, and sometimes, you know, it gives black law enforcement a bad rap, but I understand why they do it. You know, and I know why they do it, because you know, when they have cats like Pat Lynch and all them other law enforcement that support the culture, they can't argue with us because we know all the secrets. We know the policy like the back of our hands, and we could tell them where they do wrong, but they do not. Mainstream media do not have outspoken black law enforcement on a lot. You know, they might have us on once in a while.
Right. They don't have anybody on, for instance, but I got to go. But here's
yes,
one.
Sir.
There was one of the things we pointed out in this letter to the young people who are in the street is the trickery, the media strategy
yes, sir.
has not changed since our days in the street. The letter says the formula is to turn victims into villains, even to the using of the family members of Eric Garner and Michael Brown to discredit the demonstrators while ignoring the family of choke victim Anthony Baez. Now, his mother, Iris, is still standing with and marching with the young protesters.
Yes, she is.
But when they wanted to go talk to somebody who would say that, you know, when they were trying to connect the protesting to the behavior of the guy who murdered those policemen, Amadou Diallo's mother was on there, talking about how we're not for that and we're not, you know, these young people should direct their energy in a positive way. We know they're angry. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
These young people are in the street so that your son would not have died in vain.
Right.
And you got the nerve to say, to help the police and the media connect that bizarre murder to the legitimate expression of the pursuit of justice by these young people. Eric Garner's sister's on there saying, I know good cops. And when you take off the uniform, you're just a human being like everybody else. Well, the demonstrations never said that policemen were not human beings.
Right.
And the demonstrations never called for any violent action. But the Michael Brown's father, calling for a moratorium on marching. The boy, Eric, what's the boy's name in Brooklyn? Eric Adams, the borough president. He's trying to help connect the demonstrations to the murder of those policemen. How dare you do that? That's a betrayal to the whole movement and a betrayal to the legacy of our movement. But see, let's what they're saying is that, as we point out in the letter, that they want an end to demonstrations as a way of healing, instead of demanding systemic changes as the healing process.
Right.
If you want to heal, you look at the police, and these are, there are good cops in everywhere, and we know they're good cops because we know them.
Right.
And there are bad cops. And the bad cops are trying to put the whole city in a chokehold.
That's right.
And the bad cops are trying to manipulate all public opinion so that it would appear that the irrational behavior of bad cops is the normal behavior of cops, and that's not true.
Right.
But for instance, the bad cops, have not said anything that they are prepared to do to help the healing. What the bad cops say is, shut up and get in line.
That's right.
You've got to support what we say. Otherwise you're not even an American. The real Americans support bad cops. That's what they're saying.
That's
and so
right.
but for the family, and that's what I'm talking about, posturing politicians. See, I've got to go, but here's the last thing. One of the things I'm saying to these young people, listen, y'all, and y'all are young enough to be in this group. Listen, you cannot tolerate the kind of opportunistic and ignorant and mediocre leadership that is coming out of our community. You can't afford it.
Say that again, Bob, please. Say it one more time.
Yeah, listen, the condition of our people is so grave, we cannot afford the mediocre, apolitical, ignorant leadership that is coming out of the black community, particularly in the electoral arena.
That's
if
right.
y'all don't vote some people in
there you
office,
go. There you
then
go.
stop complaining.
Thank you.
Stop crying and suffer. See, Frantz Fanon, one of the books they need to read is The Wretched of the Earth. Frantz Fanon said that ultimately a people get the leadership and the government they deserve.
Wow.
And if you don't, you see, we've got people in office who couldn't, if your job depended on you recommending someone else to work with you, and if you knew you worked in a major business something, and you knew that if you recommended someone and that person turned, or if you hired them,
Right.
if you were the personnel director, and if you knew that if you hired unqualified, incompetent, mediocre people,
Wow.
if you would get fired.
That's
You wouldn't
right.
hire them. Which means that if some of these people who are in elective office, if your job depended on hiring them, you would not hire them, but you let them represent you or misrepresent us. And see, and the way it happens is that they have so corrupted the political process
Yes.
that most people say, I want nothing to do with it. And
That's
so
right.
we understand that. However, we also understand that whether we like it or not, politics controls so many critical aspects of our lives
That's right.
Absolutely.
that we can't just walk away from it because it is corrupt. It is corrupt, but one of the reasons it is corrupt is there's not enough righteous people there. See, you know, there's always been a dispute. You asked about the church earlier at the top of the show. There's always been a dispute within the church community about whether or not churches should get involved in politics. And my mother, who was an evangelist in the Church of God in Christ, she said, yes, they should, because God needs his people everywhere.
Amen.
And
Yes.
so if we don't step up, then the wicked are going to step up.
Right.
And that's where we are right now. And
That's
I'm
right.
telling you,
That's
I'm
right.
saying this to young folk, you know, because when we came up, we said we got to run people for office. See, when we were in Birmingham, Alabama, we didn't demonstrate and build the movement in Birmingham to protest anything. The movement in Birmingham, Alabama was a voting rights movement, not for some symbolic level where we have to be able to vote because it's our civic duty.
Right.
We said that we have to vote because our goal is to vote Bull Connors out of office
Right.
and to put in a black sheriff, and to vote the white mayor out of office and put in a black mayor. See, and in those days, just saying put in a black person in was enough. Because
Right.
black people were suffering so much so that the black person in office who had the black community, had a solid black community in support, was going to be able, he was going to make a difference if he didn't do anything.
Right.
Because Bull Connors was beating up people and raping black women and Bull Connors was terrorizing white folk.
Right. Right.
You know, and so if we got Bull Connors out, if the black sheriff didn't do anything, long as he didn't rape black women and, you know, do all the same stuff that Bull Connors was doing, so it was a victory. But the movement was targeted
Right.
and had some specific goals in city after city. We were in Selma, not just so people could vote as a civic duty, but to use their ballot as a political tool and to be able to effect changes as a result of the vote. And so the same thing has to happen
Yes, sir.
now. And that is why I'm telling you, y'all got to run for office or stop complaining.
Well,
You got to step up and take the leadership, or stop talking about telling anybody, Al or anybody else, it ain't your movement.
That's
If
right.
it's not his movement, well, whose movement is it then?
That's right.
Right,
That's
right,
right.
right.
That's right.
And I mean, there's a brother who told us some years ago, if there's somebody who you think is not doing a good job, the right thing, and somebody you really don't have any confidence in, don't just run around talking bad about them. Outperform them.
Right.
Amen.
Outperform
That's
them,
right.
or sit down.
Amen.
That's right.
That's right.
Amen.
Eh,
Definitely
well, thank
wanna
you,
thank
Bob.
you
Go
for
ahead,
calling.
Adrian.
Definitely thank
All
you for
right,
calling.
man.
Last time we told you we said we got to do a whole show on you,
And we did. And we did.
Yeah, yeah.
You mean I've been tricked?
No, but I told you that when I came down and saw you at Miss last time. We're gonna have you on for the whole show next time. Yeah.
But listen,
All right, now.
but this is
Always a pleasure. And,
Yes, sir.
And as I said, a lot of younger people need to learn from us. It's always a pleasure for me to hear and receive information from my elders.
That's right.
So that I can carry that forth and I can spread it to my peers and to those below me. You know, I mean, younger than I, not below,
Yes,
but
sir.
younger.
Yes, sir.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you.
All right, now, thank you. Looking for you all Thursday.
Yes, sir. See you Thursday, and I'll talk to you before then, Bob.
Yeah, because there's going to be a call Tuesday morning. I'll tell
Okay.
you about that.
Okay.
All
You got
right.
it. All
Okay.
right.
Thank you.
That's the legendary radio host, activist, Bob Law. Let's give him a round of applause. Give him a, do we have it up? Yeah, give him a round of applause. I think everybody that's watching,
Yeah.
please, you could play this show
Over and over.
over and over.
And still learn something new every time you hear it.
That's right. That's
I
right.
wanted to say, we had a couple of callers. This was so important, and we wanted Bob to be able to talk uninterrupted. So I didn't accept all the callers that called. So if anybody does want to call in the last you got 5 minutes, and if maybe we'll try to get you on to say a quick quote, quick word. If not, we thank you and ask you to call back next week. But we didn't ignore you. We wanted to get Bob Law,
Yes,
time
sir.
to speak. So we didn't want to interrupt that. So we thank you for calling, and we ask you to call back next week.
I'm getting inboxes about the rally, so I need to announce it one more time.
Yes, please.
All right, so it's No Justice, No Profit rally is going to be on January 15th.
Which is
46
Thursday.
West
Thursday.
46 West 116th Street, Harlem, New York, at the spot called Mist. And it begins at 6:30. It's from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m.
Caller, please hold.
And so we're asking for everyone to make sure that they are present at Mist on Thursday, the 15th, at 6:30 p.m. We are talking about no justice, no profit. Caller?
Real quick, caller, can you please state your name and your purpose for calling?
Peace. This is Brother Joseph Muhammad. How's the family?
Hey, Brother Joseph. You got 1 minute, brother. We had Bob Law on for the full show, and we just getting to the call.
I know. I was one of those callers, and I saw you do the dictionary with the body language, so I got off the air.
Oh, yeah, because you did do
The
that.
Brother Bob Law, that's a beautiful man, and I hope that your listening audience really appreciates the jewels he dropped on your show this evening.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to, Sister Cynthia talked about the statistics, and, nationally we spend $3.3 billion on tobacco, $3 billion on whiskey, wine, and beer, $2.8 billion per year on non-alcoholic beverages, $3.1 billion per year on leisure time, $3.5 billion a year on toys, games, pets, $19 billion per year on telephone services.
Wow.
Wait, before
Wait,
you
hold on, brother. Wait.
I need you to send me this information.
Not only
No,
that,
no,
I
matter
need
of
him
fact.
to call. I need you to call again.
Wait.
Stop fooling
But you-
around. Stop fooling around, Brother Joseph. Stop fooling around about you had 30 seconds. Listen, not only do I need you to continue, I also need you to call in and drop that.
No.
again.
We need you. No. We need you to come in.
Come in.
Yes, please.
We need you to come in, and we're going to talk about black economics.
Yeah.
And how do we change? How do we correct this? Because we need land for ourselves, and we need businesses, black businesses. So brother Priscilla, I know you're listening. Make sure you call Brother Joseph and set the date, because we're going to have Brother Joseph come on, and we're going to talk about black economics, and have Brother Bilal in here too.
Oh, no doubt.
And talk about it also.
We're going to get to the next caller. Next caller, state your name and your comment, please.
Wait, hold on. Brother Joseph, I love your
Yes.
information, man. You gotta please, you gotta come in.
Yes.
You gotta.
No,
come
no,
in.
he coming in.
We gonna make that
he
happen.
don't call with all that information and think he not going to come in.
We're going to make sure that happens. But we're going to get to the next caller. Next caller, state your name and your comment, please.
Peace. How you doing?
Hey, brother Shaw, peace, brother. How you?
All right, man. Y'all had a great show, man. Y'all spread a lot of information. I got to speak quickly. Can y'all hear me clearly?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Dr. Bob Law is a storehouse of information.
Oh, yes.
Brother Joseph Muhammad seems like he's a storehouse of
Yes,
information.
sir.
Talking about the black spending power, which is $2.2 trillion a year. More than most first world countries. We have to pool those resources to do for ourselves with that money instead of just spending our money frivolously, constantly feeding the beast.
No
Right.
doubt.
It's like we're buying their bullets for their guns for them to shoot us with.
Yes, sir,
We got to
brother.
stop it and do for self, fellas.
No doubt.
Yes, sir.
We
Thank
wanna
you, brother.
for calling as always. And when we have that show, we're going to make sure you call in.
and-
Oh, yeah,
so you
definitely,
can drop some.
And thank you for being my Facebook bodyguard.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I want to thank you for that, too.
I got you, man. You know that.
Yes,
I got
sir.
you,
Yes,
partner.
sir.
Real talk.
All right, brother. We'll talk. Yes, sir.
All right, peace.
All right,
Peace,
thank you
peace,
for
peace,
calling.
We want to thank everybody for tuning in.
Yes.
You are listening to Black Westchester Presents People Before Politics Radio, Sundays 6 to 8 on InTheMixRadio.com. Real quick, 39 seconds or less. Damon.
Listen, I just want people, for the sake of time, everything that we mentioned on the show is not reflected of White Plains Community Meeting. Got to have a disclaimer now.
Oh, yes,
since
yes,
we're
yes,
on
yes.
TV.
Yes, yes.
You can check us out, White Plains Community Media. Every Sunday from 3 to 5, you're getting a double dose of People Before Politics. If you got Verizon in White Plains, we're on channel 45. If you got Cablevision in White Plains, we're on channel 76.
All right.
Every Sunday, full 2-hour show,
Yes.
3 to 5.
And
So
then-
check us out, and thanks to White Plains Community Media to having us on.
No doubt, no doubt. Sister Cynthia.
I don't even have anything to. I just want to go. Where does Brother Joseph Muhammad live at, so I could go sit down, so he could give
Yes,
me the
yes, 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 yes.
because he was blowing
love
me
you,
out.
brother.
I couldn't
I
even
know.
type.
She was
quick
like,
enough.
I know.
she was
I was like, wait, hold on,
Listen.
wait. I got to
Listen.
the $3.3 billion a year on tobacco.
Yo,
and
he-
lost my
yeah, he
ever
blew me
loving
away.
mind. He got a list just sitting there, just waiting.
He's
To
like-
go.
Yo,
he's
but he
like
said something else
broke
that
it
was
down to
crazy, too.
alcohol and non-alcoholic
No,
beverages.
yeah, the non-alcoholic beverages. I was like,
Yeah.
Jesus, we
That's
could,
soda.
Right.
yeah, we spending more money than some third world country.
No,
I
he,
can't
no,
wait- I
Frank
can't
said
wait for that
in some
information.
first world countries.
Jesus,
Some
Yeah.
small first world countries.
Jesus. Well, listen, it's over, man. Close us out, AJ.
Yo, you could be doing anything, but you decide to ride with us, so we greatly appreciate you. Black Westchester Presents People Before Politics every Sunday, 6 to 8. That's the show. Check out the site Black Westchester News with the Black Point of View. And until next week, peace.
Peace.
22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. Any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You and I have never seen democracy. All we've seen is hypocrisy. When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare. We haven't benefited from America's democracy. We've only suffered from America's hypocrisy. And the generation that's coming up now can see it and are not afraid to say it. 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 And are not afraid to say it.